All right, half hour away from hearing the president here. And then, you know, I was flipping around before coming up here at some of the other networks covering this and referring to Afghanistan as a quagmire, another Vietnam, our longest war at 16 plus years, and we haven't yielded the results we thought we would. The fact is, though, folks, U.S.-backed troops have been gaining on ISIS and other terror elements. For example, in Raqqa, Syria, over half of ISIS forces there are gone. They've been taken out completely. Yet ISIS is still striking and, of course, can inspire attacks, much like we just saw in Barcelona and elsewhere. So what to make of that and the disconnect that seems to be going on here? American Islamic Forum for Democracy's Zuhdi Jasser is here right now. There is an interesting kind of phenomenon here, right, Zuhdi? I mean, we look at this and we assume, well, terror is still running rampant in foreign Western capitals, etc. So why does that not apparently jibe with the crackdown on ISIS elements, not only in Afghanistan, but elsewhere?
Because, Neil, this is the classic whack-a-mole program, and there is no military solution ultimately. Yes, we can defeat al-Qaeda in Iraq, and as President Bush said in 07-08, they were on the run and almost completely defeated, and then we saw ISIS come out of the vacuums in Syria and northern Iraq as we pulled troops away, and now Afghanistan has in many ways always been a quagmire, but it's part of a bigger global war. We have a war footing against radical Islam, but also political Islam. So jihadism globally is even beyond the scope of the Cold War. When we were in the Cold War against the Soviets, you never had year to year people saying, well, when is this going to be over? Why isn't this over next year? Why is it only 10, 20 years? We're still in a Cold War against Soviet or Russian communism. And the Russians, by the way, are funding the Taliban, are arming them. So we have many forces at play. And right now, I hope what the president's going to do is say, yes, we need some troops to shore up, make sure that Afghanistan doesn't become another vacuum again. But globally, this is not going to be won militarily. We have to promote a muscular liberalism against jihadism or against Islamism to stop the threat, not only abroad, but especially domestically in Europe and in America.
You know, Zuhdi, as we're watching this now, Arlington National Cemetery, where the president will address troops and lay out his plan for dealing with this region at Fort Myer. The fact is, as Nikki Haley is there, our UN ambassador, one of the things that keep coming up is whether the success of these terrorist elements in foreign Western capitals means that even as we crack down on ISIS elements in, let's say, Afghanistan, to your point, is that enough? You know what I'm saying? So a lot of Americans will look at this and say, Mr. President, we're with you trying to crack down on terror and all, but we've been cracking down on this and we see your success going after ISIS elements and other Taliban elements. But the fact of the matter is these guys are still on their crazy rampages using crude vehicles to mow down people and do a great deal of harm.
It's not even close to enough. It's only the beginning. It's the tip of the iceberg. The underbelly
so what if we
of
just
this.
eradicated them in Afghanistan? You know, just like the talk was that we eradicate them in Syria and these other outposts. I mean, to your cockroach theory, they're still there.
The precursor ideologies will be there as long as you have the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Saudi Wahhabis that are fueling it with petro-Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, the Taliban, all these global Islamist movements. Where Islam is in its time in history right now is we need a muscular liberalism to fight that. And the West can't be asleep. Our concept of the secular nation state in a long war of ideas, we need to reinvigorate what we did in the Cold War with the U.S. Information Agency. Reinvigorate public diplomacy programs to embrace and work with civil society, realizing that it's not going to be mission accomplished in 1 or 2 years, but generationally to begin to build a concept of a state within Muslims consciousness globally that embraces the concept against an Islamic military state. Because, Neil, you can't defeat jihad as long as the Islamic State exists. And when you have an imam like in Spain, where he comes out of prison and wasn't being monitored, has a cell because he believes in an Islamic State sympathy, the fact, it's mind-boggling that we're not monitoring and making those ideas radioactive, and all we're dealing with is the violence, the terror, the behavior, and not the root theocratic ideology. And until we have a cultural shift in the West with a president that identifies it as Islamist terror and not just violent extremism, we're going to continue to have to send our sons and daughters to fill those vacuums, which we'll never win.
Zuhdi Jasser, thank you. Very powerful stuff. I appreciate it, my friend. All right,
Thank you.
Nikki Haley, are you an ambassador taking pictures with troops who are there waiting to hear from their commander-in-chief in about 25 minutes? A lot of folks saying that the president wanted to make sure he was doing something on which all his top generals and military advisors and Nikki Haley and the rest would all agree. This has the fingerprints, we're told, of not only General John Kelly, of course, his new chief of staff, but his defense secretary, James Mattis, who had also argued that he was grateful for the president wanting to commit